Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for another match preview by myself. As Chelsea also take on Manchester City in this, I can't talk anymore, in the semi-finals of the FA Cup at Wembley against Manchester City tomorrow afternoon. And again, for don't know how many times in the last couple of days, a new guest on the channel, Mr. Scott Page, do excuse me, a friend from an olden time. Who, we seem to have reconnected, which I'm very glad about. So that's very good. Scott, first of all, welcome. And how are you doing?
I'm very good, man. Looking forward to the game tomorrow. I think it's going to be a big test. Best team in the country at the minute, arguably one of the best teams in Europe. And I think it'll be a good test for both Tuchel plus the players. It gives us a good sort of base to kind of go on from when we face them later in the league in the season, and also for facing bigger teams like your Real Madrid, who we're facing in the next round, possibly a PSG or City if we get through to the final. But yeah, it's a good it's a good place to start, and it's a good way of looking at where our team is and where it can go to.
100%. I couldn't agree more with that. And of course, we're also joined by, like I keep saying, a partner in crime for the Player Radix live streams, but also a lovely person that keeps joining us every now and again for our previews, which of course is Mr. CFCPys. First of all, Pies, how you doing? And second of all, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know him, check him out on Twitter. The link is down in the description below. But yeah, Pies, first of all, how you been and how you feeling here tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, man. I'm quite nervous, can't lie, but also a little bit excited. I mean, me and you already discussed that we're like excited / nervous. We're kind of on edge for tomorrow because we don't really know what to expect, what Chelsea's going to turn up. So I hope it's obviously one of the best versions, the one that we saw against Crystal Palace, where we were playing amazing and we were clinical. And yeah, but it's going to be interesting. I mean, I don't expect us to dominate the game, so it could be interesting, but I'm really looking forward to it, to be fair. And, I guess this is kind of like the final in most senses, because you'd like to believe if we won this one, then we could beat Leicester or Southampton in the final. So for me, this is a huge game and could be a brilliant first trophy for Tuchel to get here.
It really could. And it's a big game for those reasons. Obviously, Manchester City are, which is as crazy as it sounds, still on for the quadruple. I mean, they've got the League Cup final against Spurs, next weekend, is it? They're obviously in the semi-final of the FA Cup against us, like Pies just mentioned. The winner is the favourite in the final, you would argue. Obviously, depending on form, especially between ourselves and Leicester until the end of the season, you could argue if Leicester sort themselves out a bit more than they have the last couple of weeks, then you could argue it's a level playing field once we meet in the final. But especially if City make it, they'd be the favourites. You could argue they're the favourites for the Champions League, and they've pretty much got the Premier League in the bag, which is ridiculous, to even think about. But it's definitely a huge game. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here, if you're watching this right now, or if you're watching this later on as a video, please be sure to subscribe. That'd be massively appreciated. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers, so the sooner we can hit that, the better. So the more of you that subscribe right now, the quicker we can get there, and that's brilliant for everybody involved. Smash the like button as well, whether you're watching this right now or later on. Does not matter. YouTube loves likes, so the more likes things have, the more strangers and people that are unfamiliar with the channel will be shown this video, and that's how content creators grow. So please do that. Do use the super chat function if you fancy it. Of course, you don't have to, but if you fancy that, do so. And I guess that brings us on to talking about the game. Big up everyone in the chat. Chester just thrown us his lineup in already because he can't stay for long. And even his score prediction, big up yourself. Obviously, HS we see here. Melinda, big up yourself. Abdallah, thoughts on Pep rejecting Chelsea multiple times because Chelsea's hiring attacking culture. I mean, maybe that's something we'll discuss later on. Road to 10K, exactly. Kovacic going to be a miss. That's kind of taking something out of my mouth already, because that was one of the first things I was going to touch on. Thomas Tuchel's press conference on the day. First of all, the man gave you some real fighting talk, more so for next season than today, but still he was like, from day one of next season, we're going to try to hunt City down because, that's the objective for next season. Obviously, we can't exactly expect to win the league this year. I'm not even sure. Is it still mathematically possible? It probably is. We're not that far off. But still, next season, that is the big target. So I love the fighting talk from Tuchel. He also confirmed that Mateo, Kovacic and Andreas Christensen are both out injured. Kovacic, we expected, and he said, he's feeling better, but still out. So let's see whether that means he might be fit for Brighton or at least next week against West Ham. That would at least already be good. Andreas Christensen is a weird one to me. I'll get you guys on that in just a second already, because he was out against Palace, didn't make the squad. Then he did travel to Sevilla, was in the squad, but an unused sub. And now we come back to England in the FA Cup, and he's not on the bench again, and he's out. Like I don't really understand that. What do you make of that, Pies? Like, so how's that? But then, how was he available for Tuesday, but now not anymore? Now that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't really get what's happening with Christensen, to be honest. Like, I mean, I was on business trip earlier, and he was like, "Well, Christensen seems to have problems every time we play a big team." So I don't know what quite is going on. Yeah, it's hard to answer because we don't know we're not at the training ground, so we don't know what sort of issue he has. But I think we have more than a capable defence to our in Silva can probably play again, which is good. So, but yeah, even so, I do miss Christensen. He's been fantastic under Tuchel, so I just hope he's not out for too long because obviously we need rotation, we need options. There's a lot of games coming up, so yeah, I mean, we definitely need him in the team.
We really do. We do need him in the team. Scott, what do you make of that? That Christensen was in the squad against Sevilla and will not be against City tomorrow. The question before you answer that, do we have 9 or 12 subs in the FA Cup? Because we're like on the bench. Because we're allowed to make 5 subs. And in the Premier League, we have 9 subs compared to the usual 7, but are only allowed to make 3. But in the Champions League, we have 12 subs on the bench and are allowed to make 12. So I'm not sure what the situation is in the FA Cup. That might be, maybe he wasn't really fit for Porto either, but because we have 12 spaces on the bench, maybe that's why. I don't know, but what do you make of that?
It's a weird one. I just had a little look as well. We get 9 subs. We get 9 subs and can make 5 from those 9. Okay. It's a weird one. I don't like I said. I don't really understand why he travelled if this was going to be the case, if he wasn't going to be fit for this game. You could argue the sub thing, but with the fact he didn't come on, could you not have just taken... I don't think... Andrew wasn't on the bench, for example, I don't think.
No, neither was Gilmore.
If Gilmore was or whatever. Can you have done that? It's a bit of a weird one. I don't really understand it. In terms of Kovacic not being available, if I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't have played him anyway, or at least started him, just because I feel as though depending on that City midfield, if they go for De Bruyne in there and Jesus up top, I'd definitely start Kante to act almost as he did against Fernandes for United, where he just took him out of the game, didn't allow him to do anything, and it stopped all their flow. It stopped their creativity because the ball couldn't just go to Fernandes every time. Plus, I think as well, I don't think, even though they will press us, I don't think City's press is going to be as hard and as sort of continuous to the point where having Kante over Kovacic is a massive detriment. I feel as though comparing it to the game to last time is just a waste of time because it's 2 different managers and different systems and way of setting players up. But yeah, I think the Christian one, as I said, is a weird one, and Kovacic I personally wouldn't have started him anyway, unless they go for... The only way I would have started him is if they'd have gone for a Fernandinho, Rodri, Gundogan midfield, but I don't see them doing that.
Yeah, first of all, probably unlikely for them doing that, and secondly, we wouldn't know ahead of time now, would we? So it's a tough one anyway. And I'm not 100% sure whether I'd agree because I think if Kovacic was available, it would be safer not to play Kante just for him not to get injured again. But in terms of if we presume everyone to be in at 100%, I might be inclined to agree. I know Pies probably won't, but we'll get to that in a minute because that is something that I just touched on. N'Golo Kante, Thomas Tuchel did confirm that he has been given the green light by the medical staff that he is available not just to play but also to start by the sound of things, which of course is good and otherwise would have forced us to play Billy Gilmour. Some people would have been happy about that. Some people would have been worried about that. People have different views. But it's certainly better to have N'Golo Kante available than not, if that makes sense. And other than that, to judge it from the press conference, the next thing really is, that he hyped up Christian Pulisic in a sense. He's saying, how brilliant he's been the last few weeks. And, he's hitting form at the perfect time. He's getting more and more confident. The biggest thing with him is getting kind of over, I guess, somewhat anxiety of his injuries because, maybe that has held him back at times where he's kind of scared to run, scared to try things, whatever. But, he looked super fit the last 2 games. Even though I was worried about him starting against Porto and especially finishing the game against Porto, he looked super strong, kept being hacked down, kept going for sprints and looked fine. So that's good signs. Obviously, let's not jinx it, touch wood, that he stays fit. But it's still good, and it reminds you of last season. I mean, I've seen a lot of people talk about it like Pulisic treats the race for top four in the last month of the season always like the playoffs, as if he was still in America, which is quite funny and honestly seems a bit like that way if he, stays fit for the rest of the season now and keeps being a super influential player for us, because that's kind of what he was at the end of last season in Project Restart, wasn't he? He was quite some margin our best player and our most decisive player, maybe alongside Olivier Giroud with some important goals in that period as well. But still, so that's good to hear in my books. But let's just touch on him already. Now, first of all, Pies, what did you make of Pulisic's last two performances? And also, I know you touched on it on a different stream already earlier in the day, but do you think it's wise to start him again with obviously the injury concerns that he's been carrying through the entire season and even last year, in all honesty?
I mean, look, his last two games have been really, really good, especially Porto. I mean, he won 11 fouls, which was the most in a Champions League knockout game since Messi in 2011, which was pretty impressive. And he really dug deep for us in that game. He really, tried to get us forward, and he honestly suffered, himself. He put himself first, and he suffered just so we could relieve a bit of pressure. Every time he went forward, bang, he won a foul, relieved a bit of pressure. So, I honestly think he would have scored if Porto wouldn't start hacking him down and stuff. But obviously they were one of the dirtiest teams we've ever played. So his influence in terms of actually attacking was limited because of the style and just the recklessness of them. But I mean, in terms of tomorrow, it's difficult because I had this debate earlier. What game do you see as more important? Do you start him in an FA Cup semi-final, or do you play him against Brighton when we desperately need top four? And Brighton is a you could almost see, Brighton is a must-win. So, if we want to get top four, and top four makes the summer window a whole lot better, it gives us extra finances. But then again, an FA Cup is also brilliant. We haven't, we need to win a trophy. If we don't win one this year, it'll be the first time in the Abramovich era that we've gone 2 seasons without winning one. So, what do you do? What game do you prioritise? It's very difficult. Do you play Werner tomorrow in hopes that City play a high line, you can catch him on a break, or would you continue to play Pulisic? For me, I would continue to play Pulisic because I just think it's logical to play someone that's on form and could easily win us the game tomorrow if he's at his best. But then again, I do see the other side of the debate where, look, he's got injury problems. Playing him tomorrow might be a bit of a risk with only like 3 or 4 days rest. So I see both points, to be fair. It's a hard one to call whichever way you look at it for me.
Yeah, no, that is fair. Scott, what about you? Like, obviously, the last 2 games were brilliant in particular. Well, it's weird to say in particular for either, because obviously he scored 2 goals against Palace, but was arguably slightly less outstanding in terms of outside of the goals than Havertz and maybe even Mount in that game. But still, what has Chelsea been lacking? Actual finishing and goals. And he provided that in that game, even if he didn't quite stand out quite as much as the other 2. And then against Porto, it was kind of the opposite. Obviously, none of them scored, but in terms of standing out of any of the front 3, he was certainly the one that did so the most, especially surprisingly to me and impressively to me. The longer the game went on, the more he did, I felt. The more he tried to, grab the game by the scruff of the neck and kind of just do it by himself at times.
Yeah, I also think that with the games that Pies touched on, the Brighton and City, I think you can prioritise both with who we've got. Because the way I look at the City game, the way that teams get at them is by going at the back line. Even though they have improved in that area, they're still shaky in parts. We saw that in both legs against Dortmund. And I feel as though the only 2 players we've got in our squad in terms of the front line that can actually probably in terms of our entire squad, that can actually run at their defence and get at them are Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi. And I don't feel Hudson-Odoi has had enough game time to the point where he is ready to be chucked in against, as I said, the best team in the country, arguably one of the best teams in Europe at the minute. And I'd almost go with Pulisic in this game and then go with Hudson-Odoi in the Brighton game, because it's a similar sort of thing where Brighton are so expansive and so open with the way they play that, again, or even a Werner in that game where he's got a bit more space than he'd normally have and he can actually get in behind and do the things he does best. So I think Pulisic needs to start this game just because he is the only one I see in our entire team that can actually get at that defence when he's fully fit. And at the minute, I'd say he probably is, or at least is 90% fit, which I'd take at the minute. And I just think that's the best way to get at them, and that's the way I think we'll get the goals, is by going at that defence. It's not going to work with us. I know we won't anyway, or I doubt we will intentionally, but us sitting back and trying to hit counter-attacks or us trying to play with the target man and Giroud up top. I don't think that'll work because that plays right into City's hands. It means
that's what they're most used to, isn't it?
In what sense?
Everyone does that against them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've seen in games in the past, like I always go back to it, that Bournemouth game from 2 seasons ago where Bournemouth genuinely didn't, I don't remember them getting out their own half. City had the quality to eventually break them down and won 1-0. They've got that quality to break teams down regardless of if they sit or whatever. So I think going at them is the best thing, and I think that's what Tuchel wants to do in the game. And I think to do that, you either need Hudson-Odoi or Pulisic, and I think Pulisic's the better option right now.
That is definitely fair. Flyers, I saw your comment. I think it's a good comment. If you want to either remind me of it or post it again once we kind of get to the right wing back position, that'd be sick. Obviously, when we talk through our lineups, that would be very good. It's a weird one because I 100% see your point in terms of do you start Pulisic here? Do you start Pulisic there? The problem I see and the question I see is we have other positions where that's kind of a struggle. Do you know what I mean? Like you touched on Callum Hudson-Odoi, but if Callum Hudson-Odoi starts left winger against Brighton, that means Reece has to start another game at right wing back, and he can never get a rest. And it's kind of like where this accumulation of just games, do they become a problem in certain positions? I don't know. With that said, we'll quickly touch on what Pep Guardiola said in his press conference. One, Sergio Aguero is out. Does that make such a big difference? Barely plays, and when he does, barely scores this season, in all honesty. So probably wouldn't have featured even if he was fit, let's be honest. But he's seems their only absentee, or at least the only absentee that Pep Guardiola mentioned in his press conference. Other than that, he said everyone's fine but tired. Obviously, they had that one game less of preparation time or recovery time between the last time out and the next one. Funnily enough, the opposite way around, as it will be after the Champions League semi-finals when we play Man City in the league the weekend after, and we play the Champions League tie on the Wednesday, and they played on the Tuesday in that midweek. So that's, I guess, some interesting fact for you if you cared. But anyway, let me move on. He did kind of praise Thomas Tuchel in the way he said, he knows how much I rate him, and basically said how much he thinks Tuchel is a brilliant manager. And also said he wasn't surprised at all that Tuchel, started working very well. Was kind of looked very surprised when a journalist was like, yeah, Thomas Tuchel, but we can call him pragmatic and, Chelsea playing a bit boring, which is still something I don't really see. I mean, yes, we don't score loads amount of goals, but since December 5th, name me one Chelsea game that wasn't against Morecambe where Chelsea were brilliant to watch under Frank Lampard. So I don't think, because he said compared to Frank Lampard where the football was brilliant, I'm like, Frank's first season, sure, and maybe between October and November, of this season, sure. But from December until he got sacked, we played awful football.
What it is it's the same people that call this boring and the same people that call Pep Guardiola's tiki-taka at Barcelona boring. It's just because they don't see the high energy, the Liverpool way of playing where it's all pace, all power, all 100 miles an hour every minute, a whole 90 minutes. That's what they don't see, and they don't see an expansive game because they see one team methodical and playing with the ball, and just because it's not quite as pleasing on the eye as the other way, it's labelled boring. It's not boring. It's just being a better team technically. It's having the ability to play that way. There's a reason that Liverpool can't play that way. It's because they don't have the technical players to play that way. Their midfield, bar Thiago, doesn't have the technical ability to play the way we do because of the players they've got, and that's not a knock on the system because it's a good system, but it's just different differentiations and systems. And I think I'm not surprised that Pep said what he said because of the way that Tuchel has molded himself. He's molded himself after Pep Guardiola. He's gone since he was at Mainz. He's molded himself on the way Pep likes to play. And there's a brilliant story that I advise people to go out there and listen to and go and find it. And it's about when they were both managing in Germany. It was when Tuchel was at Dortmund, Pep was at Bayern, and they met in a cafe or a restaurant. And there was one of the waitresses gave an account of what happened, and that they were afraid to go to the table because of it wasn't a shouting match, but the discussions became so animated between Pep and Tuchel on tactics and using salt and pepper shakers to use players and whatnot.
That is brilliant.
It was they didn't want to approach him because they didn't want to interrupt him because of how animated and how expressive they were getting with it. And I think that just speaks to both of them. They're both of that tactical, really every minor detail sort of way of thinking. And I just think that it isn't surprising Tuchel's done as well as he's doing, and I'm in no surprise that Pep feels the same way.
So that is super interesting. Pies, did you know that story? Because I actually didn't.
No, to be fair, I don't know much, didn't know much about it, and yeah, it's as you said, as Scott said, about like Pep's not surprised that Tuchel's doing so well. I'm not either. You know, I was one of the ones like when Lampard was doing really bad, I got quite a lot of stick for it because I was like, let's just make a change. That he's clearly not going to get us top 4 here, and you know, even if he did scrape top 4, it'd be very hard for fans that understand what Chelsea are like to sort of see progression under him. I just didn't see any signs. So when Tuchel came available, I was like, this guy's a world-class manager. We have to get him. It's like, for me, it was similar to Havertz. Everyone was like, why are we signing Havertz when we've got all these other players? It's like, when they become available, you just don't pass up on this type of opportunities. Like, for me, Tuchel is right up there, and I've always believed this, and I love the way his teams play. And honestly, for me, it's a dream to have him, and I hope that he stays many years. I was talking to you, Laurenz, as well, that, you know, I hope he is the one that breaks the curse, as long as he gets the targets he wants and reaches the objectives, which I think he will, then there should be no problems. But you know what it's like at Chelsea. It's a bit of a nightmare sometimes.
It's also the problem is like you said, we discussed this, and I still don't think he will last more than 2.5, 3 seasons at the max. Sadly, it's not like I want this to happen. It's just what I think, if that makes sense. And the problem is, the better you do, the more the club invests, the higher the objectives become. And our objective is then winning the league, winning possibly Champions Leagues, right? And then you're up against teams that are so good that are investing equal amounts, that arguably have equal, if not better squads, and equal, if not better managers. And that's when objectives to be reached become super difficult, you know? And that's why it's like, you just never know. Like, yeah, you can say it's if top 4 is the objective, yeah, I'm very confident that we will consistently achieve that under Thomas Tuchel. If winning the league is, well, that doesn't just depend on us. That depends on how good a season do City have, how good a season do Liverpool have, you know? That's not just on us then anymore. And that's where it just becomes a tricky one. And sadly, obviously, it's a long time ago now, but knowing from Chelsea, we've sacked managers coming second. Do you know what I mean? So in the tunnel after the last game. So, you know, it's not like we've never done it before. But one thing that Flyers has also mentioned here, and I was going to come up to now, Tuchel has actually never beaten Pep Guardiola. They faced each other 5 times. As far as I'm aware.
3 draws in those times.
Yeah, exactly. That was but it was I think twice with Mainz and then 3 times with Borussia Dortmund. Because so Tuchel was at Dortmund for 2 seasons, but basically after his first season, Pep left Bayern. So that's how that happened.
They've actually drawn 2-2 3 times, which is pretty crazy.
Exactly. And one of those draws was, by the way, in a cup final that they ended up losing on penalty. So very unfortunate for Thomas Tuchel in that way, but still hasn't actually beaten him. Obviously, there's always a first time. Hopefully tomorrow is the first time. Or hey, if it's not tomorrow, maybe it's in a Champions League final. You know, I'll take it. I'm not going to complain if that's the case. But does that have any impact? Does that have any impact on Tuchel? I don't know. Psychologically, does that have any Tuchel impact on Pep? Psychologically, he's like, well, he hasn't beaten me yet. Pice has just lost his connection. He'll be back in just a second. But what do you make of that, Pice?
I don't hold much weight to these sort of things. It's the same sort of thing that I saw people after we beat Porto, saying, "Oh, when we were on the live stream when we were talking about like facing Real Madrid, it was the review like about facing Real Madrid. People were, oh, but Tuchel's never lost to Real Madrid or something like that." And it's like, it's all about context. It's like you said. It's like was said. Number 1, 2 of those games were with Mainz. Like you're almost never going to beat Bayern Munich with Mainz, not unless you have.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who the manager each way is. Yeah,
yeah, like you might, depending on certain things. Like for example, we've seen this season where Bayern have had a couple of weird results, but there's context behind those results as well. So then you're looking at 3 games, and as we've already touched on, one was a draw in a cup final. They lost on penalties. Like that can go either way. And then the other 2, I don't know, but it's all about context. And it's like, it's the same with the Real Madrid thing, where it's like, he was at PSG. Like, are you surprised that they didn't lose to Real Madrid? Or they beat Real Madrid with the front line they had, with how they're playing and everything? It's like, it's all about context. So they hold a little bit of weight, but I don't think they hold any much near as weight as people want to point out sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. And like Flyer said here, Tuchel, when obviously asked about this, he didn't like use the excuse, oh, I had the worst team. Maybe with Mainz he somewhat did, but with Dortmund he didn't even use that. So, the mentality is same with the fighting talk for next season is certainly there. Just because Mira has kind of spammed the living hell out of us here, and we just want to touch on it quickly, saying, have you heard the latest news that says Barcelona coach Koeman wants Ziyech, who thinks he tried to bring him to the Dutch national team?
I think Ziyech could play for both. Monaco could play for Monaco, the Dutch national team. Not Monaco, Morocco, sorry. And he chose to play for Morocco. I think he could play for both.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what Miro is trying to say, Koeman was current Dutch manager when that became a thing to choose, maybe something like that. First of all, no, I will say I haven't heard those rumors that Ziyech is wanted by Barcelona. On the other hand, I'm like, as much as Barcelona have been in a bit of turmoil, I'm sorry, does he want to go from one team where he's on the bench mostly to another team where he's on the bench mostly? Like, if Dembele stays fit, Ziyech doesn't play over him. Messi plays on the right wing. And then they have Griezmann as well. Where the hell? And Ansu Fati when he's back from injury. Where on earth does Ziyech play?
For me, it all depends on like who leaves, because I know sometimes this season they've gone for a 4-2-3-1, so he could play as the number 10, but it all depends on like who goes in that situation. Because like, for example, if like Ricky Puig stays, because I know they had their differences, but he's now staying. If I assume Frankie will stay. If who else they play at that number? They can play at the number 10. Like if Pedri's playing so well at the minute, I just don't know. I don't know how much game time he'll get, because I don't see, with how good like Pedri's been and Trincão's actually been decent as well, and they can both play there. I don't see how much game time he's actually going to get if he goes there.
That number one, and also Ansu Fati has been injured for a long time, so you could kind of see him as a regular starter when he's fit, right? And then you probably put one of Messi or Griezmann as the 10, depending on what they do with their striker situation, I suppose, because that's Barcelona's obviously biggest issue. This is one that Clutch has chucked in here. This is one that I have actually heard. Sorry?
I have heard this one. I said I've heard this one. I actually have heard this one, like you.
Exactly, yeah, no, I have. Another one that I find, I don't know, it's kind of the other way then weird. I'm like, would you really go from Chelsea to Sevilla? Like, that's too much of a backward step, if you ask me, for Ziyech to just be totally fine and happy with that. I mean, maybe that's me being harsh on Sevilla a little bit, maybe, but at the end of the day, let's be honest, it's probably true.
That this one's more of a sort of a system thing where I couldn't see it in terms of the trade, because Kounde is quite a sought after centre back at the minute, but I believe they play a 4-3-3. And the wingers they've got are out-and-out wingers. They're not like inside-forward type players, which is what Ziyech is. So I don't know how he'd fit in that midfield, because they play like they don't play an attacking midfielder. They play 3-8s, I think, or a 2-8s and a 6.
But I think the right-hand side is inside the winger, because Navas is their right back, and he's obviously so attacking.
Yeah, but they
presume that the right winger is a bit more inside, because he gets a lot of goal at Campos as well.
I'd say the right winger is a natural winger in terms of he has the pace and the ability to beat players in the dribble. Whereas I think if you're bringing Ziyech in, you're either playing him as the number 10, or you're playing him in a system where, like for example, at Ajax, they didn't have out-and-out wingers. They had two inside forwards that would cut in a lot, and their fullbacks got very high up, which is I don't really, bar Navas getting up and down, I don't really see Sevilla doing that as much. Their wingers are more out-and-out wingers.
Yeah, who's their left back anyway? Obviously, it was Reguilón, wasn't it, last season? Acuna, yeah, exactly, who they signed from Sporting. He's a brilliant player, by the way. Just quickly, because we haven't gotten Pice's thoughts on it, and then you cut out. Did you hear the rumours that apparently Barcelona wants Ziyech, and do you put any sort of truth into it? And then, obviously, which you can see on screen, the rumours of a trade or whatever with Kounde. And I want to say this on Kounde, by the way. Kounde is a very good player. But unless we stick to a back three, I think he's too short to be a centre-back in the Premier League.
I will say this, though, to all the people saying that, like, he has an incredible leap. So this is the only thing. Like, if we're scouting him and we want him, then there's obviously, like, reasons why. And he is an incredible player. And I think the scouts obviously take changing system into account as well. Like, I'm pretty sure Tuchel is going to play a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-2-4 next season, is what I've been hearing anyway. So I think if we do sign Kounde, then he's definitely plausible to play in the back four. It just depends who we partner him with. So those are the only rumours that I've really heard is about Kounde and Ziyech swap. I haven't heard anything about Barca, but definitely there's been a lot of articles and reports about Ziyech going for Kounde, but again, not sure what will happen. Kounde will probably want Champions League football. He's that sort of talent. I think he can demand that. Because obviously Real Madrid have been interested in him as well. So,
aren't Sevilla fourth anyway?
Right, we'll have a little look.
Pretty sure.
Yeah, have a little look. But anyway, if he was to come to us, I'm pretty sure he'd want to play Champions League football. So I think that depends on if we get fourth, that transfer or potential swap anyway.
They are comfortably fourth.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I thought it's kind of like a battle of the front three, then Sevilla kind of in their own thing, and then it's the rest.
Oh, to be fair, they're not far off third, but yeah, like the top four are comfortably top four. Like the only difference will be who finishes first to fourth, but it's those four that will finish first to fourth.
Exactly. Like, and I do see the point that Pies just made about the leap, but you know how the Premier League works. You know how referees are. You know, if the striker is taller and puts his arm on him, the man ain't leaping anywhere, and that's just the issue you have when you're short.
For me, the problem I have with this is if he plays, you have to play Thiago Silva every time he plays, because I don't think Rudiger is enough of a leader in terms of like having the, what's the word? Not mentality, but like the not being rash effectively to play in. That's the word. The discipline to play and be the leader in those two. Kounde isn't the leader if you play him. I don't think Christensen is either. For me, the only sort of disciplined leaders we have in the back line are Azpilicueta and Thiago Silva. And unless you're converting Azpilicueta to a centre back primarily, and that's it, you have to play Thiago Silva the whole season, and I don't know how feasible that is.
First of all, how feasible that is, and that makes the height problem an even bigger problem, because Thiago Silva is short as it is. So then you have two short centre-backs. Good luck against Burnley with that. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't even want to try, if I'm being totally honest with yourself. We'll get to your comment by Yesh Vardan in a minute. I obviously butchered your name. I do apologise. But, yeah, I mean, it's one of those. Kounde is certainly a good player. I think one of those that are even to a higher extent than Declan Rice in terms of overpriced of at least the fees that are rumoured, personally. And if people remember Lucio, the Brazilian centre-back from, 15 years ago at this point, maybe 10 years ago?
Inter one.
Exactly, Inter, and before Inter was Bayern Munich. That's who Kounde reminds me of drastically, because I watched a couple of La Liga games this season, because obviously I can watch them on the zone here, and Kounde every now and again, he just does basically what Zuma did against Ajax, but he just does this multiple times most games. And that's what Lucio was kind of known for, when he just had enough and just took the ball, just ran with it. And he's even scored from it once, Kounde, fair enough, that I saw. And I'm sure probably more times than once that I didn't watch. But yeah, so I like that. It's always fun, but it's not exactly what I'm looking for, shall we say, as the main priority in a centre-back, shall we say that. And Mira, I strongly presume you're either Dutch or North African with such a statement, because I mean, you could argue Mount's already better than Ziyech, and he's 5 years younger, 6 years younger. So I'm not sure with that, but you know.
I would agree with that if we're going on, like, as he's put, if we're talking about at their very best, I'd say Ziyech is, but I'd say Mount has the highest ceiling. It's the same with, like...
but that's right. I thought in terms of, like, almost potential, kind of like.
No, I see that as if they're on their peak right now, and I'd say Ziyech is, but Mount definitely has the higher, like, ceiling.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree with that. I'm not sure if someone's because I can't see it on StreamYard. Let me know how many mods are in the chat, because obviously there's a lot of people that think it's funny to create funny accounts. And so if there's mods here, I don't need to block them myself. If there isn't, I need to block them myself. Regardless, enough talk about random transfers, about Hakim Ziyech, Kounde, and whatever. Let's actually focus on Chelsea against Manchester City, which is a huge game, a ginormous game, tomorrow in the FA Cup semi-final, with, of course, the other semi-final being Southampton against Leicester, taking place on Sunday evening, actually. But let's, start with this question by... Again, not even going to try. Let's go through our lineups. And I guess for once, it is actually a small debate to be had in terms of goalkeeper. Because Kepa, well, he did at least play the one FA Cup game that we did play under Thomas Tuchel against Barnsley. Also played the league game after that against Newcastle. And obviously played every FA Cup game under Frank Lampard, if I'm not mistaken. So, do we go Kepa? Do we go Mendy? What you're saying, Pies?
No. No chance for me. It's got to be Mendy for me. I don't want to see Kepa playing. Like, that's just my personal opinion. I think in a big game like this, you play your number one goalie. I think it's non-debatable for me anyway. It's 100% going to be Mendy.
Hey, I'm not... I would certainly pick that myself too, but I'm not quite as confident about it as you are. What about you, Scott?
I agree. I think the sentimental sort of choice would be to pick Kepa, but I don't give a shit about sentimentality. We're trying to win the game. And yeah, I'd prefer us to play the better of the two keepers. Play Kepa in the final, sure, if we get to it, because as I think Pice touched on, one of you touched on, we should be winning. Like, if we can beat City, we probably should be winning the trophy. So play Kepa in the final, but play Mendy in this game. It's the bigger game. It's like we theoretically need our best team out that you can possibly field. So yeah, play Mendy.
It's an interesting shout, actually. I'll get to that with Pice straight away. Would you then, if we say win tomorrow, would you then play Kepa in the final, Pice? I don't think you would, but it's an interesting shout by Scott.
No chance. No chance for me. Mendy is solidified number one. Like, even in the Prem games we have left, people talk about playing Kepa maybe 1 or 2 games to boost his value a bit, but I don't see any easy games that we have left to trust Kepa enough to just to shove him in. Like, even with Brighton, they're a very underrated team for me, especially going forward. I really rate Brighton. I really rate Potter as well. So
if Brighton had a genuine striker, they'd be top 6 right now.
Bro, they are a good team. So that's what I mean. For every game that Mendy's fit, I want him in there. It's just I don't care about sentiment, as Scott said. It's just you play your best keeper for me anyway.
I mean, I see that, but like as in say, so obviously there is circumstances in which I would certainly play Kepa. Say we have top 4 secured by the last game, play Kepa, right? That's one circumstance where obviously in my eyes. And then finally, it's an interesting shout because like you can certainly make that case. It's not like it's not just Mendy is clearly the better goalkeeper, but Kepa has been good for months. Obviously, he hasn't played much, so he hasn't had that many chances to be bad. But whenever he has played, he's actually been good. So, it's not like if we started him in the final, I'd be now petrified. Shit, Kepa started. I don't think it would happen, personally. If he starts Mendy tomorrow and we win, I guarantee Mendy starts against City. Just if I'm thinking about what would Tuchel do. And I also would personally pick Mendy, and I think it's more likely, but I think there is a chance that Kepa starts tomorrow.
I agree, and I think that the only reason I say picking the Kepa thing is just because of, like, again, if we're going to play the sentimental option, if we're going to be like, you've played all the cup games, like we'll give you the final sort of thing, then yeah, fair enough. And that's why I said I'd be fine with that. But the tomorrow, I just have mad flashbacks to Kepa under Sarri, that 6-0. Don't know why, just have mad flashbacks to that. That was.
I swear he wasn't at fault for any of those goals, actually, was he?
He wasn't at fault.
He was just too short for a couple of them.
Yeah, I was going to say, someone that we know claimed he was too short and that was the problem, which he can't really be at fault for, but at the same time, like, it's more of a case of...
even I said that. Like,
it's more of a case of I just think Mendy is, as we mentioned, just the better keeper and just the better shot stopper. And we saw with some of the saves he's made recently, the one against Porto in the first leg, the header, there was another... Was there one in the second Porto game? There was another one recently, I've forgotten. It was a very good save, but just some of the saves he's made recently where I think City are going to get those chances. No matter what we do defensively, City will get chances, and I feel much more confident with Mendy in goal being the one they're coming at than Kepa.
Yeah, no, I would certainly agree. So let's go with Mendy. Obviously, what Tuchel will do, we'll just have to wait and see tomorrow. But us three will go for Mendy in goal. And then as for the back three, I think we're all pretty confident and pretty, well, in agreement that Rudiger will start left centre-back and Azpilicueta will start right centre-back. I guess there is a small debate to be had about the central centre-back position because obviously Christensen is out, who's arguably been, well, at least our most consistent best central centre-back because Thiago's obviously not been able to play a lot due to his injury. But Thiago did have a good game against Porto. Obviously, he went down for like 30 seconds or whatever late in the Porto game, which I wasn't sure whether this was time wasting, whether he had an actual little bit of a cramp, whether this was an injury coming. I don't know, right? He's clearly fit. Tuchel didn't mention him being injured. But is there a danger of if Thiago plays, he picks up another injury, and especially while we have Christensen out, that is a bit of a problem? I personally start Thiago and then play Zuma if Christensen still isn't back against Brighton. That's what I personally do. But let me go with you first, Pice. I'm pretty sure you'd agree with that. And after that, let's see what Scott says.
Yeah, I do agree, to be fair. I think Silva has to play another big game. As long as he's fine, then yeah, definitely play him. And Zuma, it's been a bit of a weird one because under Lampard, I thought he was actually quite good. But under Tuchel, this guy's been a bit dodgy, especially defensively. I know he scored the other day, but he's always an aerial threat. But I don't know, defensively, I just don't really... I don't trust him as much as any of our other defenders, if I'm completely honest with you. Especially like positioning wise, he seems to get caught out quite a lot. So yeah, I'm not really in favour of Zuma starting ahead of Silva if Silva's fit. To be honest with you.
Yeah, I would agree. Scott, what about you? You go with
I
Silva?
basically agree with exactly what you said in terms of play Silva for this one and Zuma for the Brighton game. The only way I'd say Zuma should play this game is if they go KDB as the false nine, which I know they have done a bit, only because the thing with Zuma, as Pius mentioned, is positionally, his positional awareness is awful. We saw it against Southampton for that goal that Minamino scored. We saw it again in the the first and last goals that West Brom scored. Positionally, he has no idea of what's going on around him. And so if De Bruyne is playing in the midfield with his passing, if they have Jesus or like a Sterling or someone up front, then he's not going to have a clue. If De Bruyne is playing as the false nine, then with the fact that he'll be dropping off a bit more and they'll only have the two wingers as the forwards, then I can understand playing Zuma because he's got a bit less to do in terms of the positional awareness and positionally speaking. But yeah, I see them playing with Jesus up front. So for that reason, I play Silva.
It's an interesting one whether they'll actually like play a striker. I know you like they didn't against Dortmund.
It's one of those things where they have sometimes and they haven't other times, so I don't know what they're going for. So for me, it's similar to the Kante Kovacic thing, where if Kovacic had been a fit, it's very much what are they playing as to who plays. Silva, I think, should be starting anyway, but I'd hear the argument for Zuma if they have KDB as the false nine, because then you've got a little bit less of worriment in terms of where he's positioning himself.
Yeah, no, I think that's certainly a fair statement. I think that's certainly a fair statement. And Flyers, if you're still in the chat, now's your time, because now we're going to talk about the fullbacks, the wingbacks. And obviously on the left side, if he is fit, I think we're all in agreement that Chilwell starts, right? Because he has to. Pricey as well?
Yeah, definitely. I don't want Alonso starting. Definitely not against what's his name? Mahrez. He's probably going to play.
Oh, Christ. Yeah, that's
whether it's Mahrez or Sterling or whoever they're going to put out there.
Foden.
Probably have nightmares. So I think Chilwell is probably their safest option just because he has legs, especially. So, yeah.
Exactly. It seems like Flyers might not be in the chat anymore. But what he basically proposed earlier is, should Callum Hudson-Odoi play a right wing back tomorrow with the thought of attack is the best defense, and that Hudson-Odoi as a right wing back can cause City more problems than Reece James can, and maybe that would be more beneficial even defensively in kind of on the flip side, even defensively, just because it's more of a threat offensively. I don't know if you agree with that. Personally, I do not. Personally, I say we're Reece, but is it a shout that's worth even discussing much? Let me go with you first, Scott.
It's a decent shout, but I just think I agree. I kind of see his point when he says about attack being the best form of defense, but you still need defensive solidity. And I think Reece gives us that. We saw against Porto where their left back kept getting so high up, and I feel it will be the same with City, whoever plays there, whether it was Zinchenko or Mendy or Cancelo or whoever it is, where you need that defensive solidity from your right wing back to be dropping back and helping out, to keep pressure off Aspi and to keep pressure off of whoever's the right centre mid, so they're not having to be dragged out of position to help cover that space. And for me, just thinking about after you mentioned the Callum thing earlier about Brighton, is I'd almost play a right wing back in that game where you're not going to be required as much to be defending. You haven't got quite as much. You're not quite as worried about their left hand side as you will be in this game. And yeah, I'd certainly make the case for Callum starting right wing back, or certainly starting in that Brighton game. So then you get the rest you were talking about with Reece James. He misses that game, or at least misses depending on if he comes on or not. And then so he gets that rest, and you play Callum in the Brighton game where we should be having more of the ball. We should be doing more of the attacking, like in the Palace game.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Pice, what about you? Do you think Callum against City as a right wing back is a fair shout, or is that a bit too out there?
It just depends whether Tuchel trusts him to do like the defensive work for me, because going forward, I think he's amazing. Honestly, I really do rate Callum very highly. 1v1 ability is amazing. His crossing's brilliant. Yes, again, his passing's good. His link-up's good. Yeah, I really like him. He's got a lot of pace, so a very good talent. It's just whether can he hack the defensive work that's going to be required against City, or do you go with the safe bet of Reece James, who is already a defender? So I said Reece on Miz's stream, so I'm going to stick with that. So yeah, I'll stick with Reece.
That is fair. Before we get to the midfielders, I quickly want to touch on this. Equally, like Natasha made this comment and someone else made it earlier as well, that seemingly people think Kepa has this significantly better passing than Mendy. And I won't lie, when we signed Mendy, I would have agreed with that. But having watched Mendy play for us so far this season, I actually disagree with that. And I actually trust Mendy's passing more than I trust Kepa's. I know because he's tall and maybe a bit unorthodox, a bit like Zuma in a way. It doesn't look like he's sorted it, but I think Mendy's passing a lot better than people give him credit for, personally. If any of you have anything to add to that, please do.
I think it's the one area of his game as a goalkeeper he does need to work on. But I would say that I can see why people would say that Kepa's has been better. But I've made this point before where I don't care how good your passing ability is as a goalkeeper. I care how well you are able to keep the ball out of the net. And Mendy's a better goalkeeper. Like, that's why I want, just as an example for England, I want Nick Pope playing rather than Jordan Pickford, because Jordan Pickford is genuinely terrible at trying to keep the ball out of the net. But just because he can hit a long ball, he's sometimes picked. Like, I want a goalkeeper that can do a goalkeeper's job first and foremost. Then I want someone who can play with the ball out of their feet as an add-on. But I think in terms of the playing out from the back thing, I think I'm preferring us doing that rather than just constantly hoofing the ball. Because if you have the ball, they can't hurt you. If you have the ball, you can't concede unless you score an own goal. But if you have the ball, you can't concede. And yeah, a team can put pressure on you, but I'd rather that rather than you get the ball, hoof up straight away, especially against City. They are then constantly coming at you. It's just wave after wave after wave of pressure. And sooner or later, that pressure gives, and they will score if you do that. So I think I can understand the worries people have with playing out from the back, and it certainly is a balance. It can't just always be playing out from the back, even under pressure. There has to be a couple of times when you go long, but I'd rather play out from the back rather than just hoofing it long every single time.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Pies, well, what about you? Like, I mean, like I said, I think you can certainly make the case that Mendy's passing this season is better than Kepa's passing last season. Not better than Kepa's passing under Sarri, fair, and you could maybe put that down to confidence, sure. Personally, I actually think Mendy's biggest flaws are that he's not sure when to come out of his goal and when not to. He's been brilliant in a few games, but he's also been caught out in the middle of nowhere a couple of times. Not this is an awful and thing that he's absolutely horrendous at. Games that I'm thinking about here is Leeds under Frank at the bridge when he didn't know when to come, when to go, when we conceded early in the game. And then there was one not too long ago.
There was the
against West Brom when the ball came over the top and he kind of came and kind of stayed, and then that didn't really work for him.
Was that the first goal?
Yeah, the first one. For
me, that was more on Zuma and Christensen. They should never have let Pereira run through. They lost him completely.
No, I agree. But Mendy ended up on the penalty spot. Like, you're not anywhere here. Either come out properly or stay in your goal. Don't be. Do you know what I mean?
The one I can think about of that point was the Everton penalty, where we lost 1-0. But that's the sort of that one and the Leeds one you talked about, the sort of the most egregious cases of that I can remember. But yeah, for me, it's just the passing, because like I think it's a similar thing with the passing where I think his passing is good enough. It's just he has moments of hesitation where he'll not quite know where to pass, and then he'll do something like he did against Porto, where if Corona has a bit more composure, then he creates a chance from that, but he just decided to hit it first time.
I mean, the Porto one is maybe why it's in people's minds as well. I kind of already forgot about it. I won't lie to you. Pies, what do you make of that? Is that the one case that would make you ever think of Kepa over Mendy? Or, I mean, I know you're very strongly for Mendy, so it won't make a difference to you either, but do you even think Kepa's passing is better?
I do think it's better. I think that's one of the main reasons we bought him, was because of his distribution and his passing. And it's because, obviously, Sarri wanted a goalkeeper that could pass well, and that's probably why we signed him over anyone else, to be honest. We were looking at Alisson, but then again, Kepa was joined, and I think one of the main reasons was because of his distribution. I do rate it. It's just other areas of his game that I don't, but I've always said this about Kepa. I don't have a problem with his passing. I think he's pretty comfortable on the ball, and whenever I watch Mendy, he's just so shaky on the ball, so that's polar opposite for me.
Yeah, I don't feel that shakiness, but hey, we're all here with different opinions. Guys, before we get to the centre mids, we have quite a few people watching. So if you're here right now, please be sure to subscribe. That'd be massively appreciated. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. So, the more of you that get subscribed, if you haven't already, the quicker we can get there. And if your reasoning for not having subscribed is not having a Google account, bloody make one. It takes you like a minute. It really doesn't take long. So just make one. And then you can also smash the like button, which everyone should anyway. Let me check how many we have, which is definitely not anywhere near enough. We only have 53 likes, guys. Come on. We have 180 people watching. So make sure you smash the like button right now. Let's get to 100 likes. We can definitely easily do that. Just go down below, smash the like button. And if you fancy it, use the super chat function, supports the channel, and make sure that, we talk about your comment because there's a lot and I can't otherwise discuss everyone. I have to pick and choose, right? But let's get to the centre mids, and it's not really a discussion to be had because to everyone that has maybe joined a little bit late, Mateo Kovacic is not fit and available for the game, not even available to make the bench. So it will, logically, also N'golo Kante has been given a green light to start the game. So it will just be Jorginho and Kante. It won't even be Gilmour. He will be on the bench and maybe come on for Kante if the game allows it, either when we're losing too heavily or winning quite comfortably. But, it will just be Kovacic and Jorginho and Kante, CFCPys.
Sorry, what's that, Laurenz? I didn't catch you there. Cut off.
It will just be Jorginho and Kante in midfield, won't it?
Oh, yeah, tomorrow, yeah, it definitely will be. I'd love to see Billy Gilmour play, but I just don't think he will. Obviously, I don't think it's the right game either to chuck him in, but I want to see him play a little bit more. I think maybe Brighton, he has a shout if Kovacic isn't back, because then I think Kante or Jorginho would need a rest. I mean, it's like Saturday to Tuesday, that's literally nothing. So I think the fact that Tuchel said that he does trust in Billy Gilmour, and he even said he comes into his thinking, that kind of made my head turn a little bit. I was thinking, right, well, that probably means the coach isn't back for Tuesday if Gilmour's in his thinking, because he's not been all the other times, let's be honest. So surely I think Gilmour will start Tuesday, but for tomorrow it's definitely going to be Jorginho and Kante, and I hope they turn up, man, because they're going to have a hell of a job with that City midfield.
They really will. They really will. It's a tough one. I mean, there's not much to add, but Scott, anything you do want to say about it?
No, I think Pies kind of covered it. I just don't think this is the right game for Gilmour to chuck him in. The last time we saw him that I can remember was the Sheffield United game in the Cup, wasn't it? It's the last game I think I can remember him playing.
Yep.
And he wasn't brilliant. Like, that was the one area of the pitch I'd say Sheffield United really got us, was on midfield. It wasn't very, brilliant. So yeah, I just don't think this is the right game to chuck him in. Play him in Brighton.
And he wasn't great against Barnsley either. Arguably, he was really poor against Barnsley as well. Most people other than Kepa.
There's a time and a place to play him. Brighton, I'd certainly play him. Other games later on in the season, depending on whether top four's wrapped up, depending on how the other team's form is and whatnot. But yeah, this just isn't the right game to play him. Yeah,
no, I would agree. I will say this right now. So far, we've picked the exact same 11 that started against Porto. So, as we now come to the front three, are there any changes, or are we actually genuinely feeling we're going to start the exact same 11 as we did against Porto? It was a tough game. It was a very physical game. The majority of that team already started against Crystal Palace, with the exception of Reece James and Thiago Silva. I think every other player also started against Palace. So that would then mean for 9 of those players, it's 3 games within a week. Are we all capable of that? Let's talk about it. Obviously, there are a lot of options. One guy that I'm always sure starts when he's somewhat fit, Mason Mount, he starts, right? It's a big game. Mason starts. Whether it's Frank, whether it's Tuchel, he just starts, right? So let's just get that out of the way. You get to the other number 10 inside forward, left winger, whatever you want to call it, position. I guess Hudson-Odoi is a shout. If Pulisic isn't fit, I guess Timo Werner is a shout because, he kind of just always starts. But he didn't against Palace when I thought he would. And he didn't against Porto when I was certain he would. So who knows? And then obviously you can also make a case, I guess, Havertz out wide on the left. We've played that a couple of times. Even Hakim Ziyech out wide on the left. We've played that a couple of times. Or Christian Pulisic, who again, like we touched on at the very beginning, Thomas Tuchel really found really strong and good and positive words for in his press conference. So what we say? Scott, let me go with you first.
For me, if I'm picking this team, the only discussions I'm having is whether Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi starts on the left. I think the other two speak for themselves in terms of needing to start. I think Havertz offers the most against this City team just because Abraham just doesn't offer anything because of he's just a goal scorer, like a natural poacher. He doesn't offer anything off the ball, and I think that City have got the defence to handle that. It's different when you're going and playing, I don't know, a Fulham, for example, no offence to Fulham, or a Sheffield United, but this is a City team with arguably the best centre-back in the league at the minute. in their back line, a rejuvenated John Stones in that back line, and a Laporte that barely plays but is still a quality defender in that back line. I think Giroud as well. He's, again, a decent goal scorer, but just isn't quite as mobile to do the things that Havertz does. I think the Mount's needed, not necessarily for what he'd give us going forward, because I think people know my stance on him going forward. But it's more the defensive off-the-ball work that I think is going to be important in this game, which is what he offers over someone like a Ziyech. Yeah, so I think those two need to start, and I think it's just a case of whether you play Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi, because you need that player that's going to take a player on. So one thing we don't have in terms of us building this team in the minute, and those are the only two players that can do it. So for me, it's a toss-up between the two. For me, I go Pulisic, but I can hear an argument either way.
That is fair enough, but if it's not Pulisic, it will be Callum for you, not Timo, right?
Yeah. Again, Timo hasn't shown enough for me. The one thing I tried to back the other day in the Porto first leg was his dribbling ability, and he messed up a step over. Like, he literally got it trapped under his foot. So I can't even. Like, the problem is City aren't going to give you those holes in. Like, you can get their defense, but in terms of dribbling at them, they're not going to give you the holes in the defense that you can get through to get the goals that he thrives on, to get the chances that he thrives on. Plus, as well, I think if you're playing Werner, you need to play Ziyech just because of his passing ability. But then you take Mount out of the team, and I just don't think that's wise.
That is a fair shout, in all honesty. I mean, before I get to Pys with this, we did touch on it off air before, actually, as we speak about Timo Werner. Rafael van der Vaart, if people know him, former
Tottenham
as number 10 or whatever, or midfielder, right? Played for Hamburg as well, played for Ajax as well, and obviously for the Netherlands. He has made some comments on Timo Werner, and I'm quoting him. All he does is put his head down and run, which leads to nothing. Werner is truly a blind horse. He's already shown that's what he's like when he played in Germany, and he's doing it again now. What Scott has informed me after that, he did kind of, following those comments, he did kind of say, it should definitely be Ziyech after and some other Ajax player, because obviously he has a strong affiliation with Ajax, and Scott made the very fair point. Maybe we shouldn't listen to the guy if he's only just backing up his club, basically, which is a fair point. But I also think, to some extent, as much as even I wouldn't word it as harshly, and people know my thoughts on Timo, but even I wouldn't word it quite as harshly, he kind of has a point. Like, people keep talking about those runs that Timo makes. Yeah, but runs are all well and good. How many times is Timo offside? People don't give him enough criticism for that, in my opinion, compared to how much Morata got criticised for it when they were offside roughly equally as many times. And arguably, Werner is because he plays wide to the left. It's much easier to hold the line because you see everybody in front of you. So if you're playing the striker, you have to look one way. It's easy to kind of miss someone behind you, right? Fair enough, right? But if you're playing on one of the wings as a winger, you should never be offside. Never. And he's off way too many times, which triggers me. And, when he always doesn't get the control right, and this right, I see it. Pys, what would you make of the comments? Or do you just think they were a bit outrageous?
No, I think he's spot on, to be fair. I've always said, for quite a while now, I think Werner's a bit of a lost cause. I don't really see what attributes he offers. I mean, yeah, he's got pace, but again, you have to look at context. In the Bundesliga, he had way more space in the Premier League. He can't dribble. His finishing's really bad at the moment. So, you can't even rely on him. It's not like a case of, we'll accept your flaws because, we know when you get in front of goal, if you get one or two chances, you're going to score them. It's not like that. Like, you can't accept his other flaws because his finishing's good. It's completely opposite. His finishing's really bad as well. So, for me, he just doesn't get near the team at the moment. I think maybe Tuchel's taking him out just to sort of give him a little bit of, take yourself out the limelight, just train hard, but you're not going to be playing, just prove yourself, get back into the team. And yeah, I mean, it might be good for him, but again, I just don't know. In terms of tomorrow, what do you do? For me, I think you just play the same front three as we have been and then rotate against Brighton a little bit. But it's a debate to be had. I think I agree with Scott, to be fair. I'd like to see Hudson-Odoi on the left, if possible, but then again, I want Pulisic to play, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, in all honesty. I mean, I see this comment here by James, and I'm not sure if Python and Scott feel the same. As much as I criticise him, and as much as I've said, if somehow Werner can be used in helping us get someone like Haaland in, I would be very much in favour of that. That doesn't mean I'm now saying never play Werner again, but just don't play him at the moment, basically. And then you do pre-season, and then you see again next season, and then you give him a few chances next season, and you see has he improved, has he not, and then you make kind of a new judgment. But I have, and I think it's fair to have made a judgment on his performance over the last 5 months, because they have been, with a couple of exceptions, i.e. Everton, i.e. Liverpool, i.e. Sheffield United away in the Premier League. Other than those games, he's kind of been dreadful in pretty much every time he's played. Maybe Atletico at home, he was quite good. I will give him that. The interception tackle and then the assist for Ziyech, fair. Those were good. But again, it's kind of like even moments rather than brilliant all-round games, right? But anyway, I wanted to comment that by James, because
I do agree with his point though, because I think that's the thing. Like, we can criticize how he's been, but I think people saying that he is either done or that he needs to go. If it's a case of he just needs to go, and it's not for we're not doing him as part of a deal for like a Haaland or anything, then I think that's a bit far. Just because we've seen the Premier League in the past where like Drogba's first season was not very good. People forget as well. Cristiano Ronaldo's first season for United was horrible, but then he turned into Cristiano Ronaldo. So I think it's by the
compare Werner to Ronaldo, bro.
No, I know, but like, you see my point is like some people can have a terrible first season. Then the second season, once they've acclimatized to the league, can be a lot better. It's just people are acclimatized at different times. And I think if we're having the same discussion at the end of next season, then fair enough. Then it's it's a case of like, cool, probably needs to move on. This isn't going to go anywhere. But I think for now, it's like criticize him where he needs to be criticized for his poor performances. But I think there's still a player there that can be used and can be developed. It's just we need to see more from him.
Yeah, I see. I mean, I see it. And again, people will tell me agenda. I see super likely next January we loan him to somewhere and with an obligation to buy. That's what's going to happen, because might not be that much better next season. And then do you even give him the whole season? Because give him one season, 100% agree, right? But if it doesn't click by the start of next season, unless he has injury problems, then you know what I mean. Like we didn't give him Morata that time. We gave Torres the time, sure, but Torres was kind of different.
We gave Morata that time, and Christ alive, did he really stretch it?
He did stretch it, but I would remind you of this. Werner needs to score Yeah, but Werner needs to score 5 more goals this season to even match Morata's first season tally. I'm just saying that to remind people of how badly we think of Morata and Werner. And do you really see Werner scoring 5 more goals this season? Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
Get to Morata.
Maybe.
Really? He scored 1 in the last 5 months.
Maybe. It depends on like if he plays it, like because for example, if he doesn't play against Brighton
how much does he
and
play?
Doesn't play against Fulham, then no, because our last 4 games are quite difficult. But yeah, it kind of just I can see him doing it. I don't know if he will do it.
Yeah, no, obviously, and it's one of those. I mean, if he gets enough chances, he can do it. Just because, I hate on him doesn't mean I say he's now an awful footballer and can never do anything. He's had plenty of the chances to do plenty. His positioning, when he's somewhat decent and confident, is very good. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had as many chances to even miss in the first place. But the finishing just needs to turn up at some point. But just to throw my thoughts in there as well, I would probably agree. Again, I'm not the manager. If the manager and the medical team decide, and Pulisic himself, that he is fit to start, then start him. I'm not going to be in a situation of, but maybe even though everyone says he's fit, don't start him anyway. No, I think he's been too important, and tomorrow is too big of a game not to do it. Of course, if Tuchel feels, if Pulisic feels, if the medical staff feel, maybe don't start him, it's too risky in terms of injury, then he won't anyway, right? But if he is fit to start, then everyone agrees is on that, then do that. So as crazy as it sounds in my head, because I didn't necessarily think I'd think this, if that makes sense, we'll actually start the exact same 11 against Man City tomorrow as we did against Porto. And why I think that's crazy, or why I that's a little bit crazy, is because it's going to be, maybe not the complete opposite, but a very different game to how the Porto game was. Man City don't play how Porto did, and we also don't have a 2-0 lead going into the game. Hence why I think Tuchel's lineup for Porto wasn't the right one. I don't think against Porto it should have been that front 3. Hey, we went through in the end, but we didn't exactly score, so you can't say the front 3 were amazing. I think against Porto, it just should have been a different front 3, and tomorrow against City, it should have always been that front 3. That's my view. Obviously, I touched on this with Pys already, so let me go with you first, Scott, before we ask Pys if he has anything.
I do agree in terms of it's not going to be the same system, Porto, but I think it will be a similar type of game in terms of us being on the back foot and being the less aggressive of the two teams. And that's why I say I think it will be a similar sort of game in terms of the way it goes. Like I can see the first half being very much them having most of the ball, and then the second half we try and come out a little bit more when we can maybe catch them out a little bit more. But yeah, the thing for me with this front three is it's just like with this game, it's a semi-final against Manchester City. You need to respect that because it's a semi-final and it's against City, and it's like if you get through this game, you've got a very good chance of winning like a trophy. And so to disrespect either the competition or disrespect the team you're playing by fielding a weaker team or like not your strongest team that you could play, I think is a big mistake. And I think that's why this game should be treated as such. And then the Brighton game is where you can rotate because, no offense to Brighton, but it's against Brighton. We should be beating them. Regardless of anything, we should be beating them. Whether we will or not is a different story, but just based on the talent level of the two teams and everything else, we should be beating them.
I hear that. The should, but I don't think we should test it. Like rotate a little bit, a couple of positions. Say don't play.
I'm not saying like
maybe
a full like two different first 11s, but like for example, Callum can come in if he doesn't play this game. Ziyech can play in that game if he doesn't play this game. Zuma can start instead of Silva because it's not quite as you're not going to be facing Jesus, Sterling, and Mahrez. You're going to probably be facing more play Welbeck and Trossard, maybe. But like that's where you can have a few rotations and rest a couple of players in that game rather than this game, which I feel is more important.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's somewhat reasonable. Pies, what about you? Like, does it? Obviously, we touched on this before. You and I kind of agreed that maybe against Porto we should have played a different front three. Again, I see what Scott is saying in terms of the game similar. I will tell you, I'm pretty confident that it won't be a game of neither team will have a shot on target in the first half tomorrow, which is obviously was against Porto. Very confident that both teams will have at least one shot on target in the first half. I say, obviously, yes, they will press us, but against Porto, that was because we wanted that. Against City, I see that as because they're better. And I think that's different. But Pice, what about you? Do you also think it's kind of the main reason is why we have to play the same team tomorrow is because it kind of wasn't the perfect front three, especially against Porto, or would you have just done the same for both games regardless?
No, for Porto, I think I already said I would have played Giroud just because of Pepe, the physicality. I think he would have held the ball up well and won us more fouls, to be fair. I don't think that was the game for Havertz. But I think tomorrow is the game for Havertz as well. It's a big pitch. He can drift around. I think we'll have more of the ball than we did against Porto. I don't think we'll dominate possession, but I think we'll find more spaces and more gaps where he can play his game instead of just being bullied by the centre backs. Because Diaz and Stones are strong, but they're not like a Pepe and an Mbemba. You know what I mean? They're not like I don't think Kai will fear them as such. And yeah, in terms of the left wing, again, I think Pulisic just keep the same front three and then rotate against Brighton because I think that's the logical thing. I mean, it's not like we're playing, it's different if we're playing Leicester in the semi-final. Then maybe I can accept a bit of rotation. They're still a good team, but because it's Man City, I think you just have to play your strongest team. And if we win this game, for me, basically, I think we've won it. Like, I'm not getting too ahead of myself, but I think we'll win the final. So this, for me, is like the final. So I think we have to play our best team. And I think from what Tuchel said, especially from the press conference, he was like, Pulisic, Kai and Mount are the main guys on form at the moment. The others have to work to get back in the team. That kind of indicates that he's not changing anything for me. So, for this game anyway, I'd stick with the same front three. Yeah,
but I will say this, really don't get ahead of yourself with that because Chelsea have a tendency of bottling the FA Cup final when we're expected to win it. I mean, the semi-final was the most difficult tie last year. We battered United and then not got battered. Obviously, the ref didn't help and the red card for Kovacic, blah, 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 sure. And Pulisic's hamstring, sure, also, right? But we still lost to Arsenal. Same as in 2017. While against United, when United were a pretty good team in 2018, we won again. Do you know what I mean? So usually the tougher our final opponents are, the more likely we are to actually win. So definitely don't get ahead of yourself for that, I would say. And I quickly want to touch on two more comments and two more questions as such. First of all, and I'm not even going to get Scott and Pice involved in this because it's going to drag too long then. Mini Ronaldo, you have no idea how strongly I disagree with this opinion.
Same. I'm literally having an argument in the comments with him. Like, there's no penetration in that front three. You've got no penetration.
Where does pace come from? Where does
most of the teams? If you're like, sorry to interrupt, if you're going to like win titles, you're coming up against low blocks more often than not because you're playing lesser teams. So where's the penetration when you're coming up against a low block? You've got a guy that's not very mobile. You've got a guy that likes to drop deep and collect the ball, and you've got a guy that likes to look for long balls. You've got no penetration. You need someone that's a dribbler in that front three. Like either it's Pulisic or Hudson-Odoi, or even to a lesser extent like a Kai Havertz. You need someone that can dribble past players, and there's none of that front three that do that.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And again, to go with start Giroud all the time is ridiculous anyway. He's physically not capable of doing so. He's not even capable of playing 90 minutes. That's why whenever he plays 90 minutes, he's always taken off after 70 to 80 by whichever manager that is. That's because he's 34. And he's roughed up a centre-back so much. I know he's a big dude, but if centre-back after centre-back keep flying elbow first, knee first, shoulder first into your back, you're going to be sore after a while. And at 34, you don't handle that as comfortably as you do at 25. It's as simple as that. But the next comment, and I'm going to somewhat rephrase it and get both of you guys on it, is by Anan saying, Havertz is considered as one of the best footballing talents, and Foden is also one for Man City. Who do you think has done a better role in the past seasons? Now, personally, I'm not going to discuss it for past seasons because that's kind of irrelevant. I think it's a much more interesting discussion in terms of talking about the future, because people keep comparing Mount and Foden, and I think that's a silly comparison. The different players.
Foden's clear.
Foden technically, footballing ability is a better player than Mason Mount. Does that necessarily mean you will have a better career? Hey, who knows? There's a lot of, there's a lot of England midfielders, or a few England midfielders that were probably better technically and whatever than Frank Lampard. Still, goal scoring wise, trophy wise, he had the best career. Maybe not the post goals and trophies, but still. Right? But in terms of Havertz and Foden, I think that is a somewhat fair comparison. Obviously, height, huge difference. In terms of both left-footed, both technically gifted, both dribblers, both number 10, kind of false 9, out wide, very, very similar other than in height, you could argue. So, Pys, how do you compare Kai Havertz and Phil Foden?
It's difficult. I mean, they are both two incredible talents. I just think Foden is on so much of a better team than us right now. Like, I don't know, man. I just think he gets more of the platform to shine. And I think if Havertz ends up going to like a Real Madrid, if they get like really, really good again and get a mega squad, then that's when I think you'll really, really see like people gas up Havertz. I just think because he plays for us, then people just don't sort of look at him as the same level as Foden. It sounds weird because obviously we're a massive club, but it's Chelsea. If Haaland joins Chelsea, you know what rival fans are going to be like. You know what I mean? But if Haaland joined Real Madrid, you know what? You get what I'm coming from. Like the narrative is just different when someone plays for Chelsea, is what I'm trying to say, when it shouldn't be. Because I think Havertz is an incredible talent. And honestly, just such a technically gifted player. And he's so smart as well. His movement, so good on and off the ball. He scored like 20 goals or something for Leverkusen like in one season. I know it's Bundesliga, but the guy's mainly like an attacking midfielder. But for me, his best position is either attacking midfielder or false 9, like he's playing at the moment, because he has the ability to poach as well. Like, let's not forget that. His positioning inside the box is always very good. And his finishing for his age is incredible. So, like, for me, it's very close. I just think Foden gets more of the hype because he plays for Man City and he has all those world-class players around him, whereas us, we have, Mason Mount, Pulisic, just more of like the young developing players, whereas City have, like Sterling, Mahrez, De Bruyne, more established, experienced players, Gundogan. It just seems to get more hype, but I think Havertz will definitely be up there in a few years in terms of hype. And it's up to us to give him more hype as well, because he deserves it. He's a phenomenal talent.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's the challenge for Chelsea, and I think it's an understandable decision. Obviously, social media wasn't really a thing at the time, and I didn't really know any Chelsea fans, let alone from England. So I don't necessarily know how it was, but I don't think, say when Chelsea signed Shevchenko, say when Chelsea signed even Crespo, who were, especially Shevchenko, obviously it was a super Roman, just wanted him, even though Mourinho didn't. But Shevchenko was one of the world's superstars at the time, right? No one was saying, Shevchenko is now dreadful because he came to Chelsea. Maybe after they did, because he really wasn't that great for us. People might disagree on that point, some Chelsea fans. But I think Chelsea just need to put themselves in a position again, and we've been there before, and we can get there again, especially if we keep going for players like we have done over the last few years, that we buy with brilliant potential at a young age that can develop and put us into a step where people hype our players like they do Man City's players. Right now, that's understandable why they don't, because Man City win trophies every year. Bloody hell, they might win a bloody quadruple this year. Obviously, their players are going to be more hyped than our players when we are scraping top 4 against West Ham, right? So that's totally understandable. But we just need to get ourselves to a position where that can be compared. In terms of talent, I think Foden, because we're English, if you go to Germany, it won't even be a debate. So I think it somewhat because we're in England, and because Foden plays a bit like a South American or Spanish player, even though he's English, and English people are not used to this. Hence why Foden gets as much hype. That doesn't mean Foden's not good, but I don't think he would be as hyped if he was just Spanish and doing the exact same thing, personally. Yeah, I mean, Scott, if you have anything to add, and I actually did remember one thing that I did want to discuss, which probably should have put in the title and whatever else, but let me just hear your thoughts if you have anything else to add on that.
I would just say in terms of both of them, I think in 5-6 years' time, you're looking at both of these as Ballon d'Or contenders, and I mean that genuinely. Like, that's the level that that's the technical ability they have and the level that they can get to. I think we're already seeing it with Foden, we're seeing it in bits and pieces with Havertz, where I genuinely think in, as I said, 5-6 years' time, when they're at their peak, like 26, 27, they genuinely could be up there along with Haaland and Mbappe as like Ballon d'Or contenders, like genuinely. And the fact that they're being thought of in that level right now, I think just speaks volumes of how talented they are. Yes, as Pius mentioned, Foden's performing better at the minute, but he's got the better team around him. He's got the infrastructure around him that's been there for like even back when like Mancini was manager, they were preparing for Pep Guardiola. This infrastructure has been here or been building to this point for years upon years upon years. And so I feel that's part of the reason why he's able to flourish as much as he is in comparison to players like Kai and Mount and Saka and Hudson-Odoi and et cetera, et cetera. I still think he's better than all of them, apart from maybe Havertz. I think it's the only debate. I think he's the best English talent currently speaking, apart from maybe Jack Grealish. I think he's Jack Grealish and Harry Kane.
Is Jack Grealish a talent anymore, though?
Say again?
Is Jack Grealish a talent anymore? Isn't he like 25?
Or when I say talent, I just mean in terms of the best players. But if we're talking young talent, then yeah, he is by far and away the best. He's clear of any of the others. But yeah, I think they're both amazing players, and I genuinely, just from a footballing perspective, taking Chelsea out of it, I can't wait to see what either of them become.
Oh, I would agree with that. I think the Ballon d'Or is actually a really interesting one. I don't want to make this a Ballon d'Or debate here now, but the Ballon d'Or, because it's been for so many years now, just this Messi versus Ronaldo war, obviously with the odd Modric thrown in there, and then this kind of fake Lewandowski Ballon d'Or this year when he didn't officially get one, which I think is outrageous. What's that got to do with anything? I know Liga was suspended, but that was literally the only thing that maybe Mbappe and Neymar had less games to show what they can do than Lewandowski because their league was terminated. But other than that, there's no good reason not to hand out a Ballon d'Or. We played everything. So, okay, we didn't play the Euros, but we're going to play that this summer. Regardless, it's going to be interesting because before that, Ronaldinho, Kaká, who won the Ballon d'Or before that, even Cannavaro, they weren't necessarily goal scorers. But how it's developed, the Ballon d'Or, is goal scorers win the Ballon d'Or. So it will be interesting if a Foden, even a Havertz, but then probably Havertz more likely because I see Havertz as a more like high goal scoring player than Phil Foden, regardless of team. If they will ever get close to a Ballon d'Or more than third, like an Iniesta and a Xavi consistently, because they don't get the 20, 30, 40, 50 goals every year like Mbappe and Haaland are likely to do over a while. And that brings me on to talking about Erling Haaland, who there's been some reports yesterday from Goal.com that his demands in terms of wage, again, I don't know whether it's pure salary or whether some sort of performance clauses, some bonuses, whatever, are included in this. But as a yearly wage, basically, what he's asking is £30 million, 35 million euros. Just to count that down for people in terms of a week, because that's what we think of with wages usually, that's £577,000 a week, or in euros, 675,000 euros a week. That is astronomical, like ridiculously astronomical. The reports were that one English side has already pulled out. Obviously, The Athletic the week before reported already that actually what Pep said in his press conference that they can't afford a striker might not be 100% true, but might be true in terms of Haaland, and that it's them that pulled out, and that it's kind of like we're the English team that are really pushing for it, whether we'll be able to get it, whether we at the end decide whether, he'll be even for us too expensive. Who knows? But it seems like the one team that has decided it's too expensive is, if anything, City so far. Obviously, if reports are to be believed. But what do you make of that? And I will make a counter argument after I've heard your initial thoughts, because I'm sure your initial thoughts will be that's ridiculous. But let me go with you first, Pies. £30 million a year, 575k a week.
Not worth it at all. Not in the slightest. Like, even when I was watching him the other day, like, this guy is an incredible finisher, but he needs so much creativity around him. Like, his all-round game is still way off what any club would consider paying that would need. Like, with City, it's fair enough, because how much creativity, how many chances do they create? With us, it's a bit different. We create a few chances, but it's not like on the level of City, so it's just not justified, honestly. And you can come at me with, oh yeah, but he could be here for like 5-10 years. That's a load of rubbish anyway. Let's be honest. If Chelsea sign Haaland, he's here for 2 years and he's off to Real Madrid, in my opinion. Like, you're shaking your head, but it's 100% true. He would see us as a stepping stone club to get to Real Madrid. 100% agree with that. Like, I just don't see it any way different. He'd win a few titles and then he'd be off. Like, it's just, that's my personal point of view anyway. I'd much rather get Lukaku, because I see Lukaku retiring here because he's at his prime age. He loves Chelsea. He's not going to go anywhere else. He's 28. He's banging in goals. And his all-round game is absolutely fantastic. He's improved so much from Manchester United. So if we're signing a striker, for me, it has to be Lukaku.
Fair enough. We'll discuss it in a second. Scott, what about you? £30 million a week? A week.
I'm very, very conflicted, because, like, on one hand, he is a great talent. I think, yeah, he does need service, as we've seen, but I think there are times I've seen this season where he just creates something out of nothing, like the goals against Bayern Munich in the Klassiker the other week. Yeah, I know they lost that game, but the 2 goals he scored both come from either good movement or brilliant feet, and just taking shots that we just don't see any of our players taking, with the exception of maybe Mount at times, but it's still, we don't see it. But on the other hand, I'm looking at it and going, it's not necessarily, the money is astronomical, and that's like, it is a stupid amount, but it's not necessarily just the money that I'm looking at going like, this doesn't make sense. I was looking at it and go, we turned down reportedly the chance to sign David Alaba because of wages. It looks like he's going to Real Madrid. And for me, David Alaba is one of those players where we've seen this season where he has been key, even last season, to Bayern Munich. He's very versatile with where he can play. He can play either left back, left wing back, centre mid, centre back. Having those type of players is very good, especially when at that level. But the fact that we weren't willing to pay him, what was it, 350k a week? Or whatever it was, it's just, I'm conflicted, because if we're paying that much money for Haaland, it is stupid money, but almost fine, whatever. But then don't do that and not go out and get someone who's a world-class player because they wanted less than there's so much that doesn't kind of click or make sense with it.
That, I mean, there is an argument you can make. You don't want to pay Alaba that because you need it for Haaland.
Possibly, but then we still need a centre-back if we're going to challenge at the very top level. If we're where we're at now, if we want to challenge for the league, we probably don't. But if we want to be continually challenging for the Champions League, or continually going for the Premier League week after week, year after year, and be a case of it is us and City that are battling out, us, City, Liverpool, whatever, then you need a centre-back. Because I just don't think our centre-backs are good to maybe great, but they're not world-class. They're not that level up. They're not like what I see Thiago Silva is at now, but will decline to the level of the others. It's just he's at that level, I think, at the minute. He's like on the sort of the cusp of that level, of just being on that level. But yeah, it's just...
It's a weird one. The reports from Germany, just to add it quickly to what you just said, the reports from Germany were that Alaba turned us down, that we did make an offer.
Oh, fair enough.
Who knows whether that's true, right? And the same goes, and I will make this comment, we don't know whether this statement by Goal.com is actually true. Does he actually want that? How do we know? Like, we don't know that. I mean, it's Goal.com. They're a fairly reliable, source, or they're a reliable source. But again, how true do you like? Obviously, if they tell you that's how much he is earning once he's signed, you can probably take their word for it. But to take this is what they're gonna demand when no negotiations between any clubs and real negotiations, contract negotiations with any club with Raiola for Haaland have taken place, how will anybody know this? And I will read out the super chat. I appreciate it a lot, but Tuchelista saying not worth it. He'll be off in 2-3 years because of Raiola. Might as well develop Havertz as centre forward. Ridiculous. Appreciate the donation, and I will make the quick counter argument to this. Now, first of all, I think he would stay for at least 4 to 5 years. I think up until that point, Chelsea are strong enough to just say no. Until that point, simple as that. And also, he's 20. So, like, if he leaves in 5 years, that's still 25. That's still not even in his striking prime. Like, strikers hit their prime at 27. So, even if he leaves in 5 years, that's still not actually his prime. Yes, go.
I would say there's a couple of things. Number one with that point is, I've said this before on a live stream, he's better off in terms of Real Madrid waiting until Zidane leaves or until Benzema retires. One of the two. Because we've already seen with Jovic. I'm not saying Jovic is at the same level, but we've already seen with Jovic where he wasn't played because Zidane favoured Benzema. And so he's either better waiting off for Benzema to retire or for Zidane to leave, because I can genuinely see it being a case of where he doesn't start and he's put on the bench for Benzema. What I'd also say as well is with that comment about developing Havertz as a centre forward, if we do that, I'm not opposed to it. If we do that, though, there's two things. Number one, Mount can't play in a front three because I don't think he offers, I've said this before, I don't think he offers enough going forward. He's very good at other elements of our game, but his best thing is playing as an 8 where he picks the ball up deep and drives with it from the midfield. Number two is if we do that, we have to buy a goal-scoring winger. Because if Havertz is being the creator and the provider in the centre forward who will get 10 goals a season, maybe, you have to have a goal-scoring winger. A winger who's going to take, like a Liverpool at the minute, where Firmino might chip in with 5 to 10 goals a season, but is mainly the creator and you have the other wingers as goal scorers. At the minute, we've got no goal-scoring wingers, I'd argue. Maybe one in Pulisic if he gets to where we know he can be. But we need to buy a goal-scoring winger if we want to do that and develop Havertz as a centre forward.
I mean, yeah, I do certainly see that point if we're talking about making Havertz a long-term centre forward. I will say this, James, if you think Bayern will pay anywhere near that much money, you're ludicrous. Bayern cannot even afford that if they tried. My counter argument to this whole thing is it's too much money for anybody. Ronaldo, Messi, Neymar all make more money than that. Neymar, Mbappe, with his next contract extension or transfer move, will make more money than that. I guarantee it. And there is now a case to be made. Is there a reason why none of the very, very best players in the world play in the Premier League? Because we don't pay that much money. People say you can't pay that much money. Yeah, but Ronaldo and Messi make it. Maybe if we offered Messi that money, who knows? Maybe we would have got him one of the times we tried. But because we're like, say, 250k, yeah, come on then. Sure. Obviously, if they're getting paid like 50 million a year at Barcelona, he's not going to go to Chelsea for 250k a week then. So if we really want the very best players in the world, I think that's just what you're going to have to pay. And football is also evolving. If you want a Haaland and a Mbappe, you're probably going to have to pay that money. And then if you're not willing to pay that money, then you're probably going to have to put up with players that are not as good. And that's probably just the fact that we have to deal with.
I think as well, this idea that you can't pay this, that paying this big money to football is stupid. Like, this idea comes from United and just how catastrophically bad they have been at offering wages. Like, them offering big wages to players is not necessarily bad. It's who they're offering it to. Offering De Gea 350 grand a week is stupid because he's not worth 350 grand a week.
Offering like 500 bags, wasn't he?
Yeah, like, this is the thing. Like, you can offer these big wages to players. This is why I say it's not necessarily the money, it's everything else. It's like, what about like other deals and whatnot? And like, are we not doing those deals because of this money? I don't necessarily have much of a problem with the money, even if it is just wages. Kind of just depends on other things around it. But yeah, like, it's just, I think this idea comes from other teams' inept ability to just pay the right people. Like, if for example, if Paul Pogba was earning this money, or like, no, actually fuck Paul Pogba. If Bruno Fernandes was earning this money, I don't think anyone would have a problem with it because of what he's done. But it's because David De Gea is earning this money for United. It's because Paul Pogba's on big wages and they see him as like a flop. I think that's the problem. I think that people see this idea of, these players haven't performed, they're on big money, we shouldn't give big money to players.
Yeah, 100%. But like I said, the big players, and Pogba, De Gea, Sanchez, they don't fall into this category, like, even close to a Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, Mbappe. And Hazard, by the way, is on nearly 500,000 euros a week at Real Madrid. So it's not like he's crazy far off, right? So just to put this into a little bit of perspective, obviously it really didn't work out for them because he's been injured all the time. But of the level player that Hazard was for us, that to another club was worth roughly 500,000 euros a week. I think it was euros, not pounds. Right. So to get to Pies before we end this here, because he just told me he needs to leave now. Do you want to put Thurston right here, or is he correct with that? And what do you make of my counter argument that if you want the very best players, you're just going to have to pay that?
Well, I mean, Kovacic chose more talent than Haaland. No, I mean, they're completely different players. One's a winger, one's a striker, who's just an out-and-out goal scorer. I think Hudson-Odoi, in terms of like dribbling and take-ons and stuff, it's just so hard to compare because it's just completely different players. So, I find that comment a bit hard to sort of say either way. If you give me another winger, then I'll be able to compare. But yeah, and I do agree with you in terms of it's all right for us to sit here and say, we have to pay that for if we want the best players. But I just think from Chelsea's point of view, we're not going to do it. Like, it's just not happening. Like, no one.
Are you that sure about it when every reliable source tells you we're going for Haaland? Whether it's going to happen or not, but every big source is telling us we're trying.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sound like a ITK here or anything, but from what I was like told and stuff like that, and I've been speaking to someone lately, it's like we really want Haaland, and even Haaland's gonna, what is it, Haaland's dad, I think, is it Alfie Haaland? I think his name's Alfie. So Alfie and Raiola, they were supposed to meet at Cobham, obviously, because he was going round to every big club and stuff, Raiola, to seeing who had the best offers and all this. And basically what ended up happening was they are going to end up going to Roman's yacht because that's what Roman wanted to do. So there is an argument to be had where if Roman gets a good sort of idea and gets a good sort of rapport with Raiola, because we've been trying to fix that relationship, maybe Roman will just go out and fund it. Like, I don't know how sort of wages and all that works, but I just personally, for me, I don't see it happening. Like, I just think if it's those exact wage demands, like, was it like 500k a week? That's just ridiculous. But again, if Roman wants someone, then who knows what can happen. It's just there's so many different variables to it. Like, we have to get Champions League, and then it's up to Haaland. Does he even want to join us? Like, that's why I think what I was being told, that's why he's going to end up going to the yacht, is because Roman wants to personally deliver the project to his dad, because obviously he has better offers from Real Madrid and stuff at the moment. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Sorry to interrupt. Just to quickly add to this too, as well as the financial demands from Haaland, it was also said that those financial demands are what priced out both Barcelona and Real Madrid in those meetings with Raiola. Again, who knows whether that's true, but judging by that, it seems like they can't afford it in the global situation that we're in. I will just add this before we really end it out here. People always gone about, if you give a player that much money, it ruins the whole wage structure and ruins the togetherness within the squad and everything. I will say this: if you sign Haaland on that much money, and we then for the first time, well, you could argue since Drogba, but that was one season. In the first time ever, get a striker, maybe since Hasselbank, right? But that was different times of football. For the first time ever, get a striker that actually scores you 30 league goals a season. Then that does not ruin anything, because that brings in a player that actually is worth earning more money than all these players. Because, of course, you have Tammy Abraham asking for £180,000 a week when he sees what Timo Werner's doing. When you have Haaland coming in, who smacks everyone out the park, then you're going to have everyone take a little bit of a humble sit down and say, like, aha, so that's how good I need to be, and that's how influential I need to be to this team to actually be asking for any sort of raises here. Because, if we want to get to a level of a Man City, of a Barcelona, of a Real Madrid, of competing for the Champions League every year, and by the way, just to clarify this, you're not going to compete for the Champions League every year the way we did in 2012. You're not going to compete for it every year by defending and parking the bus. You're going to have to be a good enough football team to compete for it every year. So, and for that to happen, you need the best players, and the best players cost money. I'm okay saying don't go for Haaland, he's too expensive. I would even personally probably agree and say just go for Lukaku. He's a very good striker. Haaland, you could maybe you even make the case that right now Lukaku is the better player. And, Haaland has a bit more time to develop in terms of technically, in terms of movement, other than finishing and in terms of link-up play and whatever else, right? You can make that argument. Whereas true or not is a difficult situation, right? But I'm just saying, if we really want to make that step that Pys constantly keeps saying we're not at, which is why Haaland leaves, to get to that level for a player like Haaland not to leave, we need to sign a player like Haaland.
That's fair. I'd agree with that as well. I think it's needed. But I would say that I think having backups like Lukaku and I don't know who else has been mentioned, but like that, I think is good options as well. Because I think, again, like Lukaku is a very good option. He's a good goal scorer. He may not be the best in terms of other technical areas, but I think right now we just need a goal scorer. We've got the technical players. We've got the players that are good at other stuff. We just don't have, like, for as much as we criticise Werner, I think he's decent at other stuff. It's just the main thing he's not good at is putting the ball in the back of the net. And we need that. We need someone who can put the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, and I will also say this. Who knows whether we can get Lukaku? I mean, obviously, Inter are in the financial troubles, but they're going to win Serie A at this point. I mean, they're like 10 points clear or something. So they're going to win Serie A. And, that means they're going to be in the Champions League. That means cash, coming in. Winning the league always brings more money than coming sixth like they do most seasons, or fourth or whatever. And getting knocked out of the Champions League as fourth in the group stages, which lost them big sums of money. So can you even get Lukaku? Will Conte even be so happy to sell us a player? Obviously, apparently he wants Emerson, which could be used in some sort of... But does he want Emerson more than he wants to keep Lukaku? I very much doubt it. So I don't... personally, in a weird way, obviously Haaland would be much more expensive, but I think it's much easier to get Haaland than Lukaku, if that makes sense, in terms of worth for their name, if that makes sense. Because you can just get Haaland because he wants out of Dortmund. Does Lukaku even want out of Inter? Who knows?
But,
I don't know.
Laurenz, if Chelsea come calling for Lukaku, he's definitely going to want to come back. 100%.
Says who? Did you see his video? How gassed he was when he went to Man United?
I 100% think if Chelsea come calling, the emotional attachment, get Drogba on the phone. It's more than possible to do. It costs less than Haaland too. The only problem is Conte. We have to fight with Conte because Conte will probably leave if they sell Lukaku. But as I've been saying the whole time, Inter have financial problems and they've only got a certain amount of days to find, I think it's like 200 million or something. Their owners are in deep trouble. So if they don't end up finding the money, from what I've been seeing on Twitter and different other places, that they're going to have to list either Lukaku or Martinez or both and see who buys them. So I think if Lukaku comes on the market and we get top four, I think it's 100% transfer that could happen.
It could be. It certainly could be. But guys, we've been going for an hour, nearly 40 minutes already, kind of much longer than we usually do. So I kind of do apologise both to you, Scott, and to you, Pys, as well. And JP, I'm sure we'll discuss at some point later the Kane or Lukaku. Kane's just one that I don't even see as somewhat realistic, so I don't even discuss it. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's just how outrageously outlandish that is of signing Kane. We couldn't even get Modric. How are we going to get Kane? Do you know what I mean? So, that's a no for me. Any which way. Ladies and gentlemen, I really do appreciate every single one of you that has tuned in. We're nearly at 100 likes. So everyone that's here right now, go down below, smash the like button. Let's see how many we can get. Do it right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'd honestly... means the world. We want to get to 10,000 subscribers as soon as possible. We're a quarter of the way between 9K and 10K. So, let's get that ever so quickly. Subscribe if you haven't already. Appreciate the super chat earlier. If you want to become a member, there's a join button if you're on desktop, or there's the description link in the description if you're on your phone. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate you both coming on, Scott and Pys. The links to their Twitters are down in the description below. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up the Chelsea. We kind of went off on one here and didn't really discuss the City against Chelsea game. One last thing I'll ask you both, because I totally forgot. Score prediction. Pys, what are you saying?
You're really putting me under pressure.
Yeah, go on.
You know what? I said earlier, I said 2-1, so I think I'll go for 2-1. But I can easily see it being like a 1-0 or maybe even City smash us. I don't even know. Depends how we turn up, to be honest.
It's a tough one. Scott, what about you?
I agree. I think 2-1. I think I just have faith in us. I think we're decent enough defensively when we need to be, and I think if we can exploit their deficiencies in defence, I think we can win.
If I'm going to be totally honest, my prediction is that that the game is going to be decided in either extra time or penalty. Is there even extra time? There is, right?
Yeah, it's the Carabao Cup in it. There's no extra time. I think
so. So I think it's going to be decided in either extra time or penalties. I think in extra time we win, on penalties we lose. Just because Mendy is a goalkeeper and I don't really rate him for penalties, and I don't think Tuchel will actually bring on a different goalkeeper. Anyway, that's my prediction. I'm trying to be objective, not just subjective. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, subscribe, like, all of the good thing. I'm not going to keep you for any longer. Thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, and I'll see you next time.